lady field.
Hey, good afternoon. This is Kevin coming to you live from the Air Capital, Wichita, Kansas. We have some topics I'd like to talk about. Start off with an article in Black Entertainment TV website, the BET website. Black teens are fired when minimum wage rises. Now, if you've followed the debate on the topic of the minimum wage, this is something that economists have tried to get across over and over again. But let's just read the article real quick. It's no surprise that black teens, 16 to 19-year-old, are disproportionately unemployed. At the Great Recession's bottom, African-American teens had an unemployment rate of nearly 50%, while the rate for teens was 27.1. In the weak post-recession, many teens compete for jobs against downsized adults with college degrees. And economists William Evan of Miami University and David McPherson from Trinity University report that when a state or federal government increases the minimum wage, black teens are more likely to be laid off. The duo analyzed 600,000 data points, which the Employment Policy Institute said includes a robust sample of minority young adults, unprecedented in previous studies on the minimum wage. The report discovered on 16 to 24-year-old males without a high school diploma and found that each 10% increase in the federal or state minimum wage employment for young black males decreased 6.5%. By contrast, after the same wage boost, employment for white and Hispanics fell respectively 2.5% and 1.2%. So in reality, increases of minimum wage affect the Hispanics less than whites and whites less than blacks. But either way, any way you look at it, increasing the minimum wage disproportionately affects those who are young and uneducated. Now, does anybody actually understand why this happens? Let me see if I can explain this. A person, irrespective of education, has a certain skill set. That skill set is only so valuable to an employer. When you increase the minimum wage beyond the value of a particular individual's skill set, an employer will fire that person and hire somebody who has an increased skill set. You increase minimum wages to $15 per hour. The people that are currently working for $15 an hour don't suddenly get raises. What they get are additional responsibilities, because the employer simply cannot afford to pay somebody who is of low skills a greater wage. They have to make do with what they have. Now, there have been numerous studies of San Francisco and Seattle over the past couple of years since this movement for 15 has arisen, and all of these groups invariably, or these cities, have seen decreases in teen employment. That right there, while not, doesn't necessarily prove anything, it's anecdotal evidence that should support the idea that increasing minimum wages does not necessarily, it's not a panacea for anything. It really is not. But when you stop and you look at the people that are mostly affected, we're talking about young people that are just getting into the job market. You're talking about service sector jobs like waiters, waitresses, busboys, maids in restaurants and things of that, or in hotels and things of that nature. Now, let me just back up here, make something understood. These are my first attempts at live streaming. I am still experimenting around. I have tried previously just to do videos, and I frankly, it's a lot of work. As I was saying in a previous video, kudos to you guys who crank out these videos like Carl Benjamin. He cranks out probably at least a video every other day, and more power to him. I'm impressed, honestly, I am. But for me, what is most remarkable about this particular article is where it's being posted on. This is BET, Black Entertainment Television. They, more than any, would want to prop up and promulgate the Democrat talking point on minimum wages. And this is contrary to what the talking point is, the narrative. Now, I'm all for paying black people, white people, Hispanic people, Asian people, and irrespective of gender, an equal pay for equal work. But the minimum wage is not the way to get there. Numerous studies done by numerous people over the years, going as far back as Milton Friedman and before him, have pointed out that minimum wage disproportionately affects low-skilled workers, the very people that the minimum wage is supposedly supposed to help. And I'm sorry to whomever out there that I might respect, like the amazing atheist T.J. Kurt. I respect the guy. I like what he does, but he's one of the minimum wage propagandists. He definitely believes that increases in minimum wage are great, as some have pointed out. Well, where's your stopping point? Where do you, if 15's great, why not 20? Why not 25? Why not 30? Hell, why not just make it 100? And when you start really digging into exactly why they believe we need a $15 minimum wage, it's an arbitrary number. They really have no idea why they should increase it to 15 or 20 or 25. They're just picking a number arbitrarily. And in picking that number arbitrarily, they're not thinking about the negative externalities of increasing the minimum wage, which is decreased employment for uneducated people. But I really appreciate that Black Entertainment Television is running this, and maybe it will open some eyes, especially within the groups of people who have up to this point in time thought that increasing the minimum wage is a way to help the underskilled and underemployed. The next thing I want to talk about here is Elizabeth Warren. Elizabeth. I'm not running for president. I'm doing my work. Well, if you've ever really followed politics, this is not actually saying she's not going to run for president. This is just in my opinion, what this is she's trying to put out there that she's not running so that the people who want her to run will gin up even more talk about her possibly running, and you know, in essence, recruit her to run. She wants a movement. Okay, she doesn't just want to, you know, Carly Fiorina like throw out her hat in the ring without any groundswell of support for her. That's my theory. But I don't think Elizabeth Warren could ever carry a state like Texas. I don't think Elizabeth Warren could ever carry a state like Kansas or Oklahoma or Nebraska. So she's got to rely on states like Florida, Pennsylvania, the other, traditional swing states. Okay, granted, she's going to get New York, she's going to get California. But because of her attitudes and her Eastern sensibilities, East Coast sensibilities, I should say, it's not necessarily certain that she could even carry a state like Colorado. Colorado, contrary to what Democrats think, really isn't a blue state. It's more a purple state. They have a very strong libertarian bent to them. And after Obama was elected, Democrats thought they could get a lot of headway in Colorado with gun control and whatnot. And the people of Colorado said, hey, hold on a second there, Skippy. We're not going to get rid of our guns. And people who live in rural Colorado absolutely will not give up their guns. It's the only protection they have from natural predators. But I do believe that she's lying. She wants to run for president, but she's not just going to throw her hat in the ring without a groundswell of support. So saying that she's not running is an attempt to create that groundswell. So, Elizabeth, please don't run. Well, no, actually, Elizabeth, please run. Please run. I want you to run. I think it would be the best thing for the Democrat Party there ever could be. Oh, and Maxine Waters, you should run for president too. Maxine and Kamala Harris, you need to definitely run for president. All of them are weak as hell and would not appeal to a national audience. And Kamala Harris, in particular, once it's really hammered home to people on a national level, some of the things she's done in California, a lot of people are going to balk at the idea of her as president. But let's go ahead and move on to the next thing. This is, at most, is going to be an hour-long video. And as I said, and honestly, it could just be only about 20 minutes. But the next article I'd like to talk about is this. Snap. Refresh. Mass Live reports 4 Massachusetts Registry of Motor Vehicles employees and 2 others are arrested for allegedly creating false identification cards for illegal aliens. Some of the false IDs were used to register the illegals to vote in Boston. If you've been following the voter registration scandal that the media refuses to follow, what you have found is that cities like LA and San Diego and San Francisco have more registered voters than they have adults living in those cities. Massachusetts also has this same problem. Many other places that you would call blue cities have this problem. We need to clean up our voter rolls, but there is one political party that vehemently refuses to do so and fights the effort tooth and nail. Now, you can discount anything that comes from James O'Keefe, or you can take each report that he generates, you can take each one on its own merits. But when you look at the pattern of behavior from the DNC, there is a significant reason to believe that they like to toy with voter rolls in order to gin the system and get their way, at least electorally. So I find this very interesting that that Boston, actually something happened that supports the notion that there is a great deal of nefariousness going on with voter rolls in blue cities. Now let's go on to the next one here. This was on Reason.com. Thanks, Obama. Trump is expanding your effort to imprison leakers. Justice Department announces tripling of investigations. Attorney General Jeff Sessions announced today that the Department of Justice has tripled the number of investigations into unauthorized leaks of government information and will examine their rules for subpoenaing journalists. Now, the gist of this article is that what Obama started is a slippery slope, and that it led to Trump, and Trump is the slippery slope. Now, in point of fact, a lot of the leaks are just political. There is no material value to them as far as informing the American public of anything. For instance, the transcript that was released of Trump's conversation with the Mexican president and the Australian prime minister. All that was an attempt to make Trump look bad. And he already looks bad enough to most people. That doesn't mean that most people are against him in concept. And that's where Democrats are making a huge mistake with Trump, is that a lot of Trump supporters might not like what he does, but they like Democrats even less. So, and there's a lot of anecdotal evidence to support this. For instance, the GOP has brought in more money from donations in the first 6 months of Trump presidency than the DNC brought in the first 6 months of the Obama presidency. That doesn't necessarily prove anything. It's anecdotal, but it does suggest a trend that doesn't bode well for Democrats. Now, I myself am pretty dead certain that genuine leaks, genuine whistleblowers should receive protection. The Pentagon Papers in the Vietnam War, a good example. But one of the things, and I, whatever you think of Edward Snowden, what to me made his deeds a bit more suspicious was the fact that he didn't trust the American people to judge him fairly. So what he did is he ran to our number one geopolitical foe, Russia, to hide out from the long arm of American justice. Now, the author of the guy who leaked the Pentagon Papers, and I'm sorry, I'm totally brain farting on his name, and it's right at the tip of my tongue. Daniel Ellsberg. There it is, yes. He trusted the American people to judge him fairly, and he was acquitted. He did not go to prison for leaking those. It served a purpose, and the American people appreciated it. He wasn't trying to harm the military. He had no axe to grind with the military per se. Well, Edward Snowden, when he leaked all that information, even though he tried to work with Glenn Greenwald and the Intercept to make certain that it was redacted properly and whatnot, he didn't trust the American people. And in many ways, and to many people, that's what makes him a traitor. Not so much that he released the information. That being said, what we have going on in our government right now with the leaks that are occurring this isn't for the people that are doing it are not doing it to inform the American public. They're only doing it to try to harm Trump, and that's what makes it, to me, more legitimate to subpoena these journalists and to prosecute leakers, because they're not doing it for altruistic reasons. They're doing it for political reasons. But Reason.com is absolutely correct. Obama started this. The Democrats, both politically and in the body politic, didn't care. In fact, many of them, especially the average person, was ignorant because the media didn't care. If the media cared, they would have pushed it a lot more than what it was reported. But yeah, let's go on to the next one here, because this is another point where the media simply doesn't care to tell the full story. And this is at pjmedia.com. Mueller probe of Trump only exists because Comey's illegal leak to the New York Times. One of the negative features of today's daily double, triple, quadruple media outrage cycle is that many people lose context and history in which these events occur. There was a lot of heavy breathing from the media this week after it was leaked that, what do we got here? Trump admin still seeks cooperation with Russia despite new sanctions and retaliation. Okay. There was a lot of heavy breathing from the media this week after it was leaked that a grand jury had been impaneled by special counsel Robert Mueller, just one of many illegal hostile leaks that have emerged from inside the administration targeting President Trump. The person tasked with investigating those leaks until he was fired was FBI Director James Comey. But it bears reminding that the only reason why a special counsel was appointed was that James Comey himself illegally leaked memos of his conversations with the president to the media for the purpose of having a special counsel appointed days after he was fired. And James Comey flat out admitted that in testimony.
I think as I said earlier, I think the circumstances were such that I was a bit stunned and didn't have the presence of mind. And I don't know, I don't want to make you sound like I'm Captain Courageous. I don't know whether even if I had the presence of mind, I would have said to the president, "Sir, that's wrong." I don't know whether I would have. Okay. But in the moment, it didn't come to my mind. What came to my mind is be careful what you say. And so I said, I agree, Flynn is a good guy.
For you to make a public statement that he was not under investigation would not have been illegal, but you felt it made no sense because it could potentially create a duty to correct if circumstances changed.
Yes, sir. We wrestled with it before my testimony where I confirmed that there was an investigation, and there were two primary concerns. One was it creates a duty to correct, which I've lived before, and you want to be very careful about doing that. And second, it's a slippery slope because if we say the president and the vice president aren't under investigation, what's the principled basis for stopping? Okay. And so the leadership at Justice, Acting Attorney General Bente, said you're not going to do that.
He said that you and the FBI leadership team decided not to discuss the president's actions with Attorney General Sessions, even though he had not recused himself.
Our judgment, as I recall, was that he was very close to and inevitably going to recuse himself for a variety of reasons. We also were aware of facts that I can't discuss in an open setting that would make his continued engagement in a Russia-related investigation problematic. And so we were convinced, and in fact, I think we'd already heard that the career people were recommending that he recuse himself, that he was not going to be in contact with Russia-related matters much longer. And that turned out to be the case.
Did you show copies of your memos to anyone outside of the Department of Justice?
Yes.
And to whom did you show copies?
The President tweeted on Friday, after I got fired, that I better hope there's not tapes. I woke up in the middle of the night on Monday night, because it didn't dawn on me originally, that there might be corroboration for our conversation. There might be a tape. And my judgment was I needed to get that out into the public square. And so I asked a friend of mine to share the content of the memo with a reporter. Didn't do it myself for a variety of reasons, but I asked him to because I thought that might prompt the appointment of a special counsel. And so I asked a close friend of mine to do it.
And was that Mr. Wittes?
No, no.
Who was that?
A good friend of mine who's a professor at Columbia Law School.
So, as you see, James Comey did leak his own memo. A lot of Democrats like to claim that, well, it was his personal memos and that he could do that if he wished. But that still, whether they want to admit it or not, is actually improper. The memos were written by an FBI official, apparently on FBI equipment and related directly to FBI investigations. This is what Andrew McCarthy has to say, a PJ Media contributor. And Andrew McCarthy is a former AG, I believe. But the memos were government property, and he was obliged to retain those as government documents. He leaked illegally. When you pair that up with yesterday's news that James Comey lied about documents or anything that the FBI might have had with regard to the Loretta Lynch, Bill Clinton meeting on the tarmac in Phoenix, it's starting to paint a picture of James Comey as a calculated political operator within the deep state. He was as much trying to protect Hillary Clinton to ensure that she would win as he was trying to stop, anybody from finding out what was going on. He wasn't just acting as a independent investigator. That's what I'm getting at here. But let's go ahead and move on to the next one here. How Obama's weakness encouraged Russian meddling. Now, this is something that has been gone over quite a bit with different people. And unfortunately, it tends to be the right-leaning opinionators and news sources that point all of this out. On occasion, you might have a BuzzFeed article or a Vice article or Slate even that points things out. But in general, what we're seeing with the whole Russian meddling and what's been going on is that Russia has reacted to a weak presidency in the form of Barack Obama. His leading from behind, his more flexibility until after the election, the whole how he reacted to the Ukraine invasion, how he reacted to Syria and other things. Put Russia at the forefront. What he did is he created a power vacuum that Russia filled. And I know that Democrats don't like to talk about this, they don't like to admit this, but that's what happened when Obama decided to not negotiate a SOFA agreement with Iraq to keep forces there. That created a power vacuum that led to ISIS. I know Democrats like to blame that on Bush, and he might have some culpability there vis-a-vis the invasion itself. But once Bush was out of office and Obama was in office, anything that happened in Iraq past that point was on Obama's shoulders. Obama, with his leading from behind attitude, created a situation where Russia could step in and fill the power vacuum that Obama had created. Now I would like to talk about a little bit of historical information here. And over and over again, you're going to hear me rail a little bit harder and a little bit more vociferously against Democrats than I will Republicans. And I have damn good reason to do so. And that is, I was red-pilled, you might say, in 1992 with the election of Bill Clinton. I had lived in Arkansas in 1990-91 and had gotten to see Bill Clinton do some speeches. And in the election of 92, Bill Clinton had said things that was contradicted by his own speeches that he had made while he was governor of Arkansas. And the media gave him a pass on that. On top of that, there was an attitude, you might say, that that was just, for lack of a better word, was that showed the media was not an independent and fair arbiter of events. Specifically, the thing that I'm talking about really is there was an incident in the 1992 GOP convention that was related on, I think it was C-SPAN, where this reporter was talking about she had a button that she wore that said, "Screw you, I'm from the media." And it was a message to Republicans in general. Well, that opened my eyes, and I started really examining how the media treated news stories and treated people that they considered not Democrats or working against Democrats. Well, let's fast forward, up to the Obama presidency. And when Obama had experienced all of the opposition to his Obamacare, two names, or one name, two people, kept on surfacing as the masterminds behind the opposition, so to speak. And those two were the Koch brothers. Well, the media went overboard trying to demonize David and Charles Koch. Now, as I set out in my introduction, I am in Wichita, Kansas. The Koch company, Koch Industries, is a major employer here. And so, we have a particular, I wouldn't say view necessarily, but we see the Koch brothers and the company a bit differently than most people in the rest of the nation, because they donate an awful lot to the local university, Wichita State University. They donate to the zoo and the arts here in town, but they also donate quite a bit to different charitable organizations all over the planet, and have donated to hospitals, and they are philanthropists in the traditional sense. Now, they're attacked by Democrats because they're in the oil industry, okay? But for whatever you think of the oil industry, put that aside for a second. Here's a thing from 2015 on Facebook from Time magazine saying, Charles Koch says the U.S. can bomb its way to $100,000 salaries. Building bombs and using them as one way to growth, the billionaire suggests to allies. They're purposely misrepresenting what these two men have said. And when you get into the actual article, let's go through it really quick. And point of fact, the original article title was what you see here on Facebook. Facebook doesn't change when people update their articles to say something differently. But first paragraph, conservative billionaire Charles Koch is predicting average American incomes of $100,000 annually in roughly a decade if government is scaled back and regulations scrapped. One way to get there, building and using more bombs, he jokingly told about 150 donors at a political network he backs. Now, let's read exactly what he said to these political donors. I think we can have growth rates in excess of 4%. When I'm talking about growth rates, I'm not talking about that GDP, which counts poison gas the same as it counts penicillin, the 79-year-old industrialist said during off his prepared remarks. What a monstrous measure this is. If we make more bombs, the GDP goes up, particularly if we explode them. The audience laughed, clearly getting the joke. What we see in the media, time and time again, is blatant misrepresentation of Democrats' political enemies. Professor Glenn Reynolds likes to call the media Democrats with bylines, and he's absolutely correct. The media isn't evil in and of itself. They, do keep people informed to a great degree, but it's also an echo chamber where you have a bunch of people who have the same attitudes, the same narrative about the world, and consequently what that results in is this kind of yellow journalism where they misrepresent what people say and make them look bad because it fits their narrative. And in fact, when you go back and you look at the Facebook article and you read what people are saying, they didn't even read the article. They just read the headline and went with it. And that's the whole point of how this was constructed. This whole piece is essentially clickbait, trying to get people to think of the Koch brothers as these warmongers who want to kill people and who say that we can increase our salaries, we can grow by destroying other nations. And that fits the narrative that the Democrats have been trying to construct with Democrats, or the narratives the media has been trying to construct with Republicans. My bad. And it's because of this that I will focus more on the Democrats more so than I will on Republicans. And as I've told other people that I've talked to and debated, I don't need to focus on Republicans because there's a whole array, an army of journalists and reporters and commentators already doing so. But the number going the opposite direction, particularly in the mainstream media, is a tenth of what's going the opposite direction. So just in the interest of fairness, I have to elucidate on how there's misrepresentation of Republicans. Now, given who I am and my history, and if you look at some of the things I've posted, I'm definitely not a Republican. There are lots of issues, whether it be gay rights or marijuana or drug issues at all, that I don't agree with Republicans. In many ways, I'm kind of like a Dave Rubin type. To protect my liberal principles, I have to be conservative because the left isn't liberal, and because of the way that they act towards the right, just to be a fair-minded person, I have to defend the GOP more than I defend the DNC. But, okay, I'm going to go ahead and cut this one short. I've got things I got to do today, and I've been procrastinating. Well, I actually haven't been procrastinating. I've been working on an intro for these live streams, and that took me several hours, and so I'm not pleased with what I've gotten so far, but I'm going to keep on working on it, and I'm going to start doing these live streams on a daily basis, spending about an hour going over the news of the day. As I do these, I can pretty much guarantee my quality and my comfortableness will improve. And I decided to do it live streaming instead of going back and recording them, then putting them up, because I second guess myself so much. I've literally got about 200 videos I have not released, and the main reason why is that when I would record them and I would go back and listen to them, I'm like, I don't like this and I don't like that, and I would stop it and try to edit out sections, then re-record it, then I would get, I don't like what I've done, so, and then I would just get frustrated and put it away. I've got a big video on net neutrality that I'm working on, that a good case in point, it's half done. I've got another video half done on how Star Trek really isn't the socialist utopia that the left thinks it is. And I could go into a lot of detail on that, which I would love to, but when I do these live streams, there's no going back. Once it's out there, it's out there. So, okay, well, it's out there. But one of the things I'm learning how to use OBS to cut in things and be able to bring in web pages and do it live and stream with OBS, and that's what I've been using to do game captures and capture screen activity just for doing videos. But now, since I can do it live, and I'm not totally comfortable with it yet, but I'm getting there. That's what my point is. And I think in time, some people might be pleased, some people won't, but I will build up a listener base. And I don't plan to monetize any of this. I suppose if it becomes a big part of my day and I have a lot of viewers, I might start to monetize, but at this juncture, I think I'm just going to do this all free of charge, and because I like doing it. But yeah, okay, folks, I'm going to bring this to an end, and please subscribe if anything that I've said is of any interest to you at all, or share and like, please. And